Hey everyone, Angelo here. Welcome to another design tutorial. Today we're going to be discussing how to design your own book cover in Adobe InDesign. I'm going to show you how to set up a book cover with a spine included, and we'll go over how to use the Pathfinder options to create a cool design in terms of creating your own custom shapes, much like you see here on my screen. So we're going to get started. This is the result we want. So I'm going to show you how to set up this layout right now. And I have three sets of facing pages here, but I'm going to show you. I'm going to take it from scratch, and we're going to create our own new document. Okay, so I'm going to go up to File, New Document, and I am working off just an A5 standard book cover. So I'm going to go to the Print tab, and I don't see the one that I want here, so I'm going to hit View More Presets, and we want A5. Okay. We're not going to worry too much about specific sizes for book covers. If you were doing this for a client or for a specific project, you would get all the dimensions in terms of the book size cover, the spine, the bleed, all that stuff. But I'm just going to show you how to set it up for today. So let's hit A5. Keep the orientation to portrait. We want 3 pages. Keep facing pages on. And we're not going to worry about any other settings right now. Again, if you had other settings to add to this, you could, but we're just going to keep it basic for today. So I'm going to hit Create, and there are my 3 pages. Again, the problem is they're not facing much like you saw in my other version of this. So let's get that how it should be. So I'm going to click on page 1. Make sure you're working in your Pages properties here, or Pages panel. Click your Pages panel options, and we want to allow document pages to shuffle. Okay, so uncheck that or deselect, and remember how I showed you how to do this in the brochure tutorial a few weeks back or a couple weeks back. Same idea. I'm going to just grab page 1 and drag it over to the other 2 pages, and now they're together and they're facing. The only problem here is I need this middle page now to become the spine of the book cover. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is click on that middle page, and we want to remove the margin because we need to make it doesn't need a margin, and the spine's going to be way too narrow to have a margin anyways. So, and it won't allow you to decrease the width of this without removing the margin. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go up to Layout, Margins and Columns, and just make your margin 0 and then hit Tab, and you can see on this middle page here now my margins are gone. Go ahead and hit OK. I'm going to go to my page tool. I showed you how to use this a couple weeks ago. It's the 3rd tool on your toolbar. I'm going to click that, click on the middle page. You can see we have a nice highlighted area there to show that we've selected that. And there's two ways of changing the width of this. You can do it up here in your control bar, or you can go to the properties panel and change it here. And we want it to 0.9 inches wide. This will vary from book cover to book cover, but for this specific example, let's just use 0.9, hit Tab, and there you can see now we've got a nice thick spine. And that will vary in terms of how big or how large the book is as well in terms of the pages. So 0.9 is good. You can get out of your page tool, and if you see now, if I take my guides off and just zoom out a bit, there would be our front cover, our spine, and the back cover all set up and ready to go. I'm just going to revert back to my other document here because I have different swatches and things of that nature all saved and ready to go. So this is the book cover that I designed. Today I'm going to show you how to create these cool shapes in using the Pathfinder options, and how you can make kind of like a retro-y kind of design here, much like I did. So I made a blue magenta version and then a green blue version, and I think we'll make this top one again. Okay, so again I have the same page layout as I just showed you in that previous example. I'm going to go to my pages here. I am working in 3 layers, so the cover will just maintain or contain the actual just the background color. So I'm going to go ahead and click that and go to my rectangle frame tool, put my guides on. I did set up a guide system in here through the master pages, which is 4 rows, 3 columns. Okay, so I've got my background there, and I'm just going to make it that blue that I have here. And so many of these are all Pantone colors, which I like for this project. Okay, so once I've done that, I'm just going to hit lock that up. Okay, and so we've got our starting point already. Now, this is where I'm going to show you how to use the Pathfinder options to create specific shapes. So I have 2 examples up here that I've saved to the side on my pasteboard. I'm just going to go to Command C for copy and go to my 3rd layout here, and then Control V or Command V. Okay, let's do this. Before I go any further, I just want to make this, I'm just going to make this to none just so we can see what we're doing here, and then I can change it back to blue. Okay, so I've got my shapes here. To access your Pathfinder options, okay, there's 2 ways of doing it. You can go up to Object Pathfinder and then select the specific option that you want. Of course, you have to have shapes selected in order for these to work. That's why they're not highlighted right now. But an easier way or better way is just open the panel up. So go to Window, Object, and Layout, and just open up your Pathfinder window here. And there's a series. This is the row that we're going to focus on here, the second set here. If you hover over them, it's going to give you an explanation of what it is. We're not going to go through all of them. If you want a detailed version of each one of these settings, I've highlighted that in my blog that will be attached with this tutorial. I'm going to show you 2. We're going to focus on the first 2. So if I highlight my first set of shapes here, and I'll start with subtract. So that's going to get rid of it's basically going to punch through the background there. So I have a rectangle and 2 triangles. The triangles are in the foreground, and basically what that'll do is just it'll subtract those 2 triangles. So now you have a cool shape, much like I did here in these versions up here. Okay. Conversely, you could do the same thing here. Before we knock that triangle out, what I'm going to do is show you how to add it. So basically, much like you would do in Illustrator, it merges the 2 together. So you can merge those shapes just by hitting Add. So you can create cool shapes that way, stack them up, have them overlapping, and then add them to get a specific shape, much like you would do in Illustrator, but you also have that option here as well. So I'm just going to hit Command Z, and then I do want to subtract that triangle. So all of a sudden I've made the shapes that I need to create this layout. One other thing, let's go back. I want to show you, just create another set there. Let's just say, let me move that over for a sec, bring this here, and I'm going to make the triangles a little bit bigger. So the edges are kind of overlapping, and this is a cool one to use as well. So if I highlight all 3, select them, and use the intersect, use the exclude overlap. What this will do is keep the overlapped edges, but knock out the overlapped areas within the shapes that were collected together, much like you see here. So go ahead and play around with a lot of these. You might get some really cool shapes and different ways of building your own shapes for different projects. Oftentimes you might do it for backgrounds or patterns. So just try it out and see what works best for you. Okay, so let's get started here. I'm just going to move these shapes to the side for now. And now I can turn on that cover again. Oh, let's go ahead and do this. Unlock it, click on it, and make it that blue again. Now I can go ahead and lock it back up. Although those shapes are probably, nope, good. Shapes are on which layer? Good. So I'm gonna hit my guides back on. Let's take a look at what I did here. So let's start with this. I'm gonna bring this over, and I'm gonna put it to there maybe. And before I go any further, let's do this. I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller, and then I'm just gonna hit my Option and drag to the right to create another set. I'm gonna highlight both and maybe do the same thing. So go ahead and drag another version below and then rotate them around. So you get an object like this, okay? So that just by doing kind of making the shape, copying it, maybe intersecting it together, can create cool pattern-like objects like this. So I'm gonna try to mimic what I did up top there. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna bring this up to the top, and then maybe, and so you can constrain these shapes that you're making, or you could just maybe even freeform. So if you're not holding Shift and you drag, what it'll do is it'll just it'll make the shapes in a freeform kind of way, rather than holding Shift and constraining the proportions a bit, okay? Or it'll constrain them to a T actually. Okay, so let's go ahead and maybe something like that for now. Okay, and then I'm gonna grab this again, put my guides on, make this one down below. Oops. Make a copy of it, put it down below like so. Maybe something like this. So let's just say I have that, but I want these two to intersect maybe. So I'm using my guides here as a reference point. So I'm gonna go ahead and highlight these and bring this up. Okay, so there you go. You have the first set there. Now let's bring this guy over. Let's bring it down a bit. Actually, I'm gonna make a copy first, and then I'm gonna make this magenta that I made here and maybe scale it down a bit. And then what I did was, let me just take a look. Yeah, what I did was made 3 copies of it. Okay, I'm going to highlight them and then make sure that you have align to selection selected, and just distribute those areas and align the vertical centers. And then I'm just going to make another copy down below, and then another one down below. Okay, I'm going to highlight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to group each set. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Command G, and then Command G, and I'm going to highlight them and scale them down. See what I did up here, good. And then I put them, kind of tucked them in here. So I'm gonna take my guides off for a sec. So those black lines there, that's to signify where the spine begins. And then I would use my guides to kind of set the measurements for each, and make sure that you're using them to line everything up. Move this to the side for a sec. Maybe move this to the side for a sec. And let's focus on putting this in first. Okay. Yeah. Good. I'm gonna kind of cheat it here and just make it. So right now I'm just kind of testing it out and see what works, see what doesn't work. But what I did down here is, instead of having all my shapes going a different or the same way, I kind of just rotated them. I clicked on it and then rotated around, maybe made this one 45 and then had this one go the other way. Instead of having, you know, a uniformed look, try to have everything a little bit, you know, a little different pattern. And then as a finishing point to this, what I did was I also created a swatch here. So if I click on this one, let's group it, and I select the color swatch, what it does is it makes it the colors that I selected, basically that same magenta and the blue together. I'm gonna hit cancel. Now that I've applied this gradient, I can go back into my gradient swatch tool right there, go on my workspace and then draw out a line and find a good angle, a good flow for that gradient to go through. Obviously you want more magenta than blue because blue will just fade right into the background. So start somewhere in the middle and work your way out to get something like that. And I'll do the same thing to my shapes down here. Start in the middle and do something like this. And you get a good flow that way. And so the end result would be this here. I just want to focus on the spine for a second. If I go ahead and I'm gonna go down here and we'll focus on the spine. So I'm gonna just go to my type layer here. I'm gonna lock the shapes for now. And I'm gonna draw out a text frame, and I'm gonna call this book, what did I call it? Creating Culture. And so it's supposed to be something like, you know, creating a culture through design, any kind of design, interior design, graphic design. And then what typeface did I make this? I didn't do a paragraph style, so I'm just gonna see what I did and just mimic it. Okay, Allegria Sans, which is a cool font. I'm gonna use that again. There it is there, there's my set. And I'll just do bold for now. And I think I made this 15. And I'm gonna make it the magenta. Double click that text frame to make the box snug around your type. And then we're gonna rotate this 90 degrees. And then find one of these guides here that would make a good area. And then I'm just gonna make that text box a little bit bigger and increase the tracking to 80. So shortcut for tracking is highlight the text, hold Option or Alt on a PC and use your right arrow key to open it up. But you can also find it in your properties panel. When you select it, it's the VA with the 2 arrows, and there it is, it's positive 80. To take it back in, just hold Option or Alt and do the left arrow key. So it's the opposite, okay? So you want to keep that in the center of the spine. Obviously you don't want your text to be going into the other page. And so I'll do something like this, hold Alt, Option, volume 2, double click this, bring that down, put your guides on. So I have another guide here just as a reference to have everything line up, okay? And then I'm gonna double click those and maybe move them up a bit. And then finally I'm just gonna click this one and make a final copy. And this would be the author's name, Penelope Rodriguez. Okay, so I'm gonna double click that corner to make that fit. And I want this to be a little bit lighter, so I'm gonna select that and make it 14, even 13. Bring it right on that last guide there, down below. Move that over. And instead of bold, let's make it medium. And do something like that. Okay. And then this here, we'll do the same thing. We'll make that medium as well. Let me just move that. So that's how you would create shapes and work on using the type tool and rotating it to create a cool seamless typography, just to make it, you want to play with the spacing as well, right? So don't have everything so close together. Maybe look at a different book as a reference point, but I have volume, creating culture, and then the art author, okay? So that's a cool way of creating shapes using the Pathfinder options, as well as setting up your book cover and setting up a spine. One other thing I want to note, when you're exporting this, when you're sending it to a printer, File, Export, let's export it as a PDF print, save. One thing to note, that you're going to want to export this as a spread and not single pages. You don't want to send this as single pages. You want it to send it together as a spread with a bleed, and all the dimensions you're going to need from your printer will be available as well. So that's it. That's today's tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll talk to you soon and have a great day. Bye now.